Good morning and welcome to Missoula Real Estate Today. This is Denny Bedard. Missoula Real Estate Today is presented by Diane Beck of Windermere Real Estate. Along with her trusted partners, Diane provides complete service for your real estate transaction and brings us guests who provide useful information on industry-related topics and trends. And now, Missoula Real Estate Today on News Talk, KGVO. Well, hello. We hope you're enjoying your weekend, and welcome to Missoula Real Estate Today, presented by Diane Beck of Windermere Real Estate. And with us today, she was on a few months back, but it's been a while. Beckie Peterson, my former coworker and longtime friend and part of the Diane Beck marketing team. I guess I'll ask you, since we're right in the middle of it, what Q4, what fourth quarter of 2019 is looking like at this point, market-wise?
You know, for Diane and I right now, we're really busy between listings and things that we're selling. But I was looking today at some stats, and the stats really just go through the end of October. But, you know, our inventory is still extremely low. There's only 3 months worth of inventory on the market. And we like to see enough inventory to sustain 6 to 9 months for an even market between buyers and sellers. And that just means at the rate that we're selling properties right now, so as properties are coming on and selling and closing, if we stayed at that same pace of number of sales and didn't take another listing, how long would the inventory last?
Is that what you mean by 3 months? I mean, how do you know you only have 3 months of inventory, I guess might be a naive question. But
it's taking how many homes on average are we selling per
stats.
month?
Okay.
The stats. So it uses all the stats and says, okay, based on how many homes are selling right now per month, and on the average over the last 12 months and price and everything, how long is that inventory currently going to last? And in Missoula County is all I looked at. It was just the Missoula stat. Sure. It was 3 months, and that's just not much. That really is why you're seeing a seller's market still. You know, you can always play. That's just an overall, the entire market. That's not certain price ranges or certain specific neighborhoods. That's just the overall market. You always have, it might be slightly different if you're over 500,000 or over 750,000. That might change. It could be it's probably far worse when we get under the 300 mark or even the 250. There's just not a lot out there for people that they can find to be able to move into. And a lot of times when you're in that price range, you find a home and you go in, it's, great little location, but it might need some work. And usually when you're in that price category, you're not in the position necessarily. Maybe it's your first home, or maybe you're downsizing into your last one, and you're not wanting to put in another $50,000 to do all the things to it that you want. So it's really, I've got a number of people, and we just keep looking when they come on the market. And if they're well done, boy, they usually don't last very long. And
I interrupted you the end of that when you were saying where you'd like to be. You feel like 6 to 9 months of inventory. That's more of a comfort zone, which is good for realtors, but good for buyers and sellers alike.
Right. That's kind of what you call almost a neutral market.
That's
where it becomes neutral, and it's a normal market, they like to say, where you're not in a heavy sellers or buyers market. So it would be nice. But in reading the forecast that we have from an economist through Windermere, for Montana, especially some of these certain areas, Missoula, Lake County, Bozeman, etc., it's not going to change. We just don't see a big glut of homes coming on the market, and the builders can't, get enough to build right now.
Is it highly unusual to be in that situation when you are in the fourth quarter of the year and we're coming up on the holidays? Or if that happens, is it a little more typical this time of year than, say, the other times of year to have such a shortage?
No, I looked back all the way to 16, and we kind of dropped down to about a 4-month inventory in November or October of 16. And it had been up in the 6 to 9 months earlier in 16. And then by looking, it just stayed right down there. It just flows 3 and 4, 3 and 4 all the way.
So this is nothing new.
Not since the end of 16. It's not new. I think that what's happened to make us feel it a little bit more is because of that puts pressure on prices. So now in that time frame, you may see that 3 to 4 stay solid on that statistical line, but then when you switch over to our average median price, that line just goes up and up and up and up and up. We just keep growing at, 8, 10, 14% increase in prices. because of that pressure of not having enough inventory. So it's pushing those prices up. And, we'd like to see it kind of slow a little bit. And I think it will. I don't think you can continue that, but it's not going to drop and go, where prices are dropping in our market. It will take time to catch up. And as you saw, yesterday released in the news about the build fund that came in that's supposed to help with housing out in that area.
West End.
Right. And then, there's developers trying to get projects through. It's just not always easy.
What do you see that might possibly happen that would benefit prospective home buyers?
Well, if you are able to develop an area, and in that plan, I'm not really, I saw what everyone else saw.
Yeah.
Read the article. I didn't go anything. So I've seen the news on it.
Right.
But anytime you add more developable area to build more homes, hopefully out there they'll be on those, probably would be more of a dense subdivision. So hopefully that would keep the land costs and development costs somewhat, more affordable, because that's really what drives a lot of our house prices up is the cost to go in and put all the infrastructure in. You got to put in the sewer system and the water system and bring in power, all those things directly into those. And it's not, and the streets, it's not like you just get a square piece of land and build the house. All that stuff has to go into it. So, but anytime you open up more areas to get to more easily, alleviate the traffic flow issues that would come without that major infrastructure, then we can build more homes. And they're not all, so you got that area that's really great for future expansion, which would help. You've got the Linda Vista area, which is obviously growing tremendously right now. So it allows us to have more homes in the area without having to go as much outside, where we're seeing a lot of growth down in the Bitterroot. I'm hoping that's what it does.
And to add to that, the city of Missoula, not just the city of Missoula, but the city of Missoula has, a certain quantity of expectations and rules and regs that you have to factor in as well when you're putting together a development.
Yes, and there are far smarter people to discuss that with you than myself, but I do know that from a developer standpoint, or builders, it's a real, it's difficult, more difficult, I believe, than in other areas. And with that comes a lot of cost. When you're having to go back and resubmit, and you're playing a land planner, and you've got the different engineers involved, those things aren't cheap every time you go back. It's like every time, you have to go back to the doctor for something. You don't just go back and they say, hey, I know you're working on, I know you have that broken arm, but, I already saw you, so this time's free. It doesn't happen that way. And it shouldn't. Everybody deserves to make a living, and they all have that for their expertise. But when you have to go back and redo things over and over and over, rather than be able to follow the guideline of here's what it's supposed to be, I imagine it gets extremely expensive. And that holding cost, all that time you're paying for that land to sit there, the taxes, if you have loans on it, there's all those holding costs. I applaud them, because I know it's not easy.
This is Missoula Real Estate Today, presented by Diane Beck of Windermere Real Estate, and our guest, Beckie Peterson, part of the Diane Beck marketing team. Beckie, how are home buyers more savvy today than say 10 years ago? Is it social media, expectations? Realtors are delivering more as far as presentations, so I expect more. How have their attitudes changed and how they look at prospective home?
I think, as in a lot of things, they're far more educated on the process than in the past, because of the amount of information that's available to them to get a hold of, from being able to go online and look at homes. 10, 15 years ago, before all the listings and everything would show up on the internet, even the realtors would share, it was more like 20 years ago, but they would go around and share this book. And here's our book of our new listings today.
Right.
And a buyer couldn't just see that on their own unless they drove by and saw the sign in the yard. That's kind of how they were able to discover some things.
Right.
Whereas today, they know all the houses on the market. They know the minute they hit the market. They're comparing them. In some cases, they're able to see the history on those. How long has it been on the market? So rather than calling up and saying, hey, I'd like to know a little bit about this home, it's why has this home been on the market this long? Or why is it priced like that? Or, it's more in-depth questions that they're asking, which is great. I think it's fantastic because it is such a huge purchase. There's still an amount because it's something you don't do often.
Of course, yeah.
You go normally try and go to the doctor once a year, or you buy groceries once a week. So those, or a car every 4 or 5 years, or whatever the case may be. You kind of can remember that transaction or those processes. Whereas in real estate, it's not necessarily that case. So they don't, you don't have the repetition of memory on all the things that go on, and things change tremendously over time. The buy-sell document used to only be 3-4 pages. Now it's 10 or 11. And then there's all these supplemental addendums that go with it. And so it's understanding that process. And that's kind of where we come in, is helping guide through those steps. And here's what's happened now. Here's what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
In that timeline, and walking through it and what to expect and the setbacks, because they don't necessarily know that part. But when it comes to understanding the amount of listings and what the market is kind of like, that they're far more savvy than ever, as they are in any product. But it's really kind of nice, because then you can not necessarily have to have as much of that explanation as getting into the real details that are important financially.
Excellent lead-in, my friend, because you bring these wonderful checklists. And the last time you were in a few months ago, we got to part of it, but we certainly didn't get to everything that you bring in. But it's sometimes fun, sometimes obvious stuff, but always very interesting. So if I may, I'll just kind of pick up about where we left off. And one of the things on your to-do list, or your to-not-do list, I guess you would call
things
it,
you should not do. Absolutely should not do.
Get advice from a buying committee that has not purchased in the last year. What do you mean by a buying committee?
Well, sometimes what happens is you'll get friends, family, coworkers, or whatever that haven't bought for 3-5 years, and they're telling you about, well, this is what the market's doing, or this is what you need to look for or watch out for. And they don't necessarily know what you're going through in your process. And so you're getting hit with, well, that's going to cost you this, or that's going to be, well, no, that's not the case anymore. So it can be very frustrating and very scary when somebody says, well, I wouldn't buy in that area. Did you hear about, I knew this one person this one time, my cousin's uncle's sister's brother's daughter had this issue there. And so then they get terrified. And so I always just say, that's fine. People are, it's always good to have your close knit that understand what you're going through. But then, be careful from there, because it can, it's a huge purchase and it can be frightening. So that's usually the best ways. Get where you want to get it close, and then share.
And you're not saying to your customers, hey, this is what we got, take it or leave it. It's not like that at all, but waiting to see everything else that is on the market on your list, especially given Missoula's market conditions, which you just so thoroughly explained. That's rolling the dice a little bit, isn't it?
It is. It depends. We always go through, okay, what's your timeline? What do you want to do, and how do you want to get there? And a lot of times we all want to find the perfect 100%.
Sure. And
if we can do that, that's incredible. But the chances of finding something that is 100% exactly in every shape and form you ever want to, unless necessarily maybe you're building and you're going to build on this lot you've always wanted with this house. But a lot of times there's a little give and take of, here's my list of wants and needs, must-haves, absolutely will not live without, non-negotiables. This I really want, but I could negotiate it. These things are my wish list.
Yeah.
You really have to go in and say, okay, I want these. Well, then if say, well, I really do, but I want this house, but I want to go see tomorrow these 5 and these 5 and these 5, or you get under contract, you keep wanting to go see, you're going to frustrate yourself and you're going to doubt yourself and not be through with that process. So we usually like to say, once you've made your decision and you found what you want, and that might take you 5 houses to look at, we might have to look at 50. But once we've found it, and gotten you to whatever percentage level of 80% or 90%, then we need to put our blinders on and go straight forward through the process unless something else comes up in it, because you'll never make a decision. But again, it just, I always tell them, how do you want this to go? And if you are in a timeline, we have to look at it this way. If you're just saying, hey, we're thinking about moving in a year, well, then that's a little different.
Can I skip down to that one because it lends itself to what you were just talking about? Explain that 80-10-10 rule, or maybe a guideline more than a rule. But what do you mean by 80-10-10?
Well, okay, so there are times when what you want to do is look at it this way. If you find a house that has 80% of what you want, that you really need, or you're looking for, 10% of the things you can change, and 10% of the things you can live with and get by, then it's a keeper.
Mm-hmm.
And if you kind of look at it that way, it helps with the expectation of when you're going in and finding, that home you want, especially in today's market when there's not as much inventory. So, and more so, I look at this a lot with my first-time home buyers of, what am I, how do I go through this process? And I need these things or I want these things, and then you're finding what's out there. So that's kind of a rule. Yeah, if you can get 80% of everything you need, and then we can change a few things. What you can't change is the square footage. You can't make it bigger unless you want to add on,
right.
Those things. So what can we do to make it work just for you?
Missoula Real Estate Today, presented by Diane Beck of Windermere Real Estate, and our guest, Beckie Peterson from the Diane Beck marketing team. We're looking at the should not do list here. Calling the other agent on for sale signs. What do you mean by that, Beckie?
Well, if you decide to work with an agent, I specialize in our buyers, so I got my certificate for an ABR, an associate buyers representative.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so you've decided I want to work with you, and we're out buying houses and looking, and then you drive by one and you call the listing agent when you're working with another agent. Well, what you've done is we have a code of ethics that when you list a home, you are representing that person and looking out for their best interests. And so you have to put all of their needs, wants, everything first. And so when you call the listing agent, if you're working with another agent, their priority is not you. And it can get confusing. So it's just easier. And we recommend that you stay with let your agent do the work for you. Let them call and get the questions you need answered, everything else, because then you're not putting that fine line of information in there. They have a duty to you as well to be honest and forthright, but they're not going to tell you, well, they have to move in 2 weeks or they'll sell it for this. They can't do those things.
Yeah.
So it's best to stick with your agent that's representing you and looking out for your best interest.
Is that a common occurrence? Is that a mistake that prospective buyers make a lot?
Sometimes. I get a lot of phone calls on our listings, and I always ask, are you working with someone? And then if they are, I say, please call that person. I'll provide them with everything you need for this, but it's best to stay with your agent. And I would say I get, a few of those of people saying, well, I just want to get this information real quick. And, if they have a real quick question of how much, how many square feet are there because I'm standing outside or whatever, that's fine. But we usually just try and encourage, I'll work with your agent. I'll give your agent everything you need to know. And there's a few, but not a ton, but it does happen.
Sure.
And it's more so after you kind of get going and we're under contract. That's when you really don't want to be doing that. We've already got you going somewhere.
Attending open houses and new construction without me. Come on, I just wanted to kick a couple tires.
You can go do that.
I just wanted to looky-loo a little bit.
We always say that if we're under contract and you go do that, that's fine. I'll give you a stack of cards. That way, it's the same thing. That agent now knows that you are the client of another agent, and it doesn't put them in a precarious position. So I can then help represent you to make sure you get all the right information.
This one sounds like it was made for Denny Bedard here. Delaying paperwork because you are irritated by the frequency and and number of requests from the mortgage company. It can be overwhelming.
It can. There's a lot in both mortgage and just in our, the documents we send out for signatures and whatnot. And sometimes they feel like, well, I did my application. I gave them all the paperwork. And then all of a sudden they're calling me and asking me for a receipt from this or this document from my brother's mother's. And it's like, yes, but you have to understand, once they get that initial paperwork, it all goes into a system to check all their boxes and to assure that they're giving out a safe loan, not only for their mortgage company, but for you, that they're making sure you're financially set. And all of that paperwork being done early is so that when we get to closing, the underwriter that does the final check at the end doesn't go, oh, I don't have this. And then everything's delayed and you're frustrated. So yeah, they need it, and they need it now because time is of the essence in order to follow that timeline to get you to closing. So it's a test in patience. And it's always a, what do you mean you need another, or you think you've already given it to them, and sometimes you have, but they need it again or updated. So yeah, but time is of the essence, such an important thing in real estate deadlines.
See if I can get one more in off the list here before I move on to other things. Not realizing it is possible to find what you are looking for the very first day you go out. It happens more than you think. Well, I can understand that because I think a lot of people get in the mindset of don't take the first thing that comes along.
And that goes back to when you asked me how have buyers changed today than maybe 10 years ago. And they're so much more educated again on what is on the market, what different things look like. They know the neighborhoods. I'm always telling you, go drive through the areas you want to live. Make sure, because sometimes it all looks great, and we're really good photographers sometimes. And then you go out and you're like, oh, well, I didn't realize A, B, C, or D. And so, but a lot of times by the time we go out, they know they may not have gone out with an agent yet and gone in houses, but they have been in a lot of other houses and have a good idea of how they want to. And there's times we go out and, I've had clients who go out, we look at 5 houses and they're like, I want number 1, let's go. And you're done.
A special thank you to some of Diane Beck's marketing partners that help bring you Missoula Real Estate today, including Rob Fleming of Mann Mortgage, Miles Link of Opportunity Bank of Montana, and Carol Blodgett with MakeItMissoula.com. Our guest, Beckie Peterson, part of the Diane Beck marketing team at Windermere Real Estate. Getting back to a seller's market, Beckie, it is not lost on people that might be thinking about selling their home that it is a seller's market right now, but presentation still matters a lot. If you're serious about selling your home, you're not just going to toss it out there and put a rather high price on it and just assume that it's going to go. I mean, you still got to make your house look good, your property look good, and is that something from we were talking about buyers savvy? Is that something that the sellers pick up on too? I mean, are things you obviously will make recommendations, but are things in pretty good shape when it's time to put that listing out there?
You hope, and there are, just because it's a seller's market, it's a seller's market when priced properly, staged properly, for a good piece of property. So all those things come into play. And we always say, if you'd like it, even in a seller's market, you can't overprice it. It may be a seller's market, but for a well-priced property. You overprice it, it is no longer a seller's market because you're going to sit on it. And it's going to sit there forever until you become realistic and then price it accordingly. So getting into that whole, well, it's a great market, I'm just going to throw it on and throw it at this price. If you're serious about selling, that's not going to happen. So your real estate agent is a professional, and we have the tools around us to be able to do what we call a market analysis. And we're comparing your property, where it's located, its square footage, the condition it's in, to other ones that have recently sold, which tells us where the market's going to price that home at. And utilizing that, and then making sure, like I said, we tell people, go drive by that house first before we go see it. And if they drive by and the yard is 6 feet high and there's garbage out front and the house has peeling paint and, the fence is falling down, unless the price is incredible and they're that fixer-upper, they're going to drive right by. So there's your first one. And let's say they look past it and say, well, the pictures on the inside looked great. Well, like I said, realtors are kind of good at that sometimes. And you walk in and it's a mess and there's things piled everywhere and it's not clean and, there's pet smells. That's an immediate, boy, I've walked in houses, people have walked in the front door, done a military about face and said, I don't want to go in. So those things are incredibly important. And so they get in and find the pride and ownership, and then that it's kept that way, which can be difficult when you're trying to live, especially if you have a family, a younger family. But presentation from the curb to the door, inside, right down to the smells, are very, very important. And then it is a seller's market. You do all those things and you have it ready. It can even be a home that hasn't been updated, say, since the 60s or 70s. But if it's spotless and well cared for and has pride and ownership, people can look past that because they can add paint and change a few things if they want. And some of that's coming back, really. So it makes a big difference.
That's a great answer. You're so diplomatic, aren't you?
I don't know if my husband would say I'm diplomatic, but
okay. Well, I'll leave that.
We'll leave that right there.
Hello, Scott, by the way. Well, gosh, we're almost out of time here, so let's get to the Diane Beck marketing team at Windermere Real Estate, of which you are a key part. How's the marketing team these days, and what's everybody doing?
Our team is great. We are there's 5 of us, so when we're doing transactions for people, whether it's listing or helping them buy, it's kind of fun. We've got a great team. So we have some new members. We have Susan Williams, who is incredible as our kind of our office manager, transaction coordinator, listing specialist. She's got like 30 years in the real estate business.
Wow.
And so she is phenomenal at walking our clients through the entire process. We have Macaulay Madison, and she is helping with our listings, getting all that paperwork put together, getting everything in line so that as all the information comes in, we have everything we need to do it correctly and upload and make it as easy as possible for the other agents to be able to get what they need to help us sell that home and get it marketed. And then we have Aston Kinsella, and he's our college journalism student who helps us, and he does a lot of photographs. He does a lot of helps us with our marketing and keeps us all in line and makes sure, that we've got everything going. He's just that, I'll do anything, do it all. Yeah. And he's phenomenal. So between Diane and I working on, buying and selling, and Susan is licensed. So she's a full-on realtor, but she's, like I said, licensed in the sense, using her license in the sense to be able to handle all of the transactions and guide people all the way through that process. And like I said, she's been amazing for us. So, and then Diane, she'll never toot her own horn, but I will. Mm-hmm. She this week is down in San Francisco at the National Convention, and she will be sworn in as our newest president of the Montana Association of Realtors for 2020. This will be her second time doing this. I think the only person ever to do 2 presidencies. I think her last one, I can't remember. I think it was 10 or 15 years ago. But that's a lot. But that's her passion for the industry, making sure that we are led and continuing to grow our association and make sure that we are doing right by buyers and sellers, and that our members are of the utmost educated and caring for our, Montana residents that are buying and selling property. So I'm excited for her.
Website, location, ways to contact the Diane Beck team at Windermere Real Estate.
Well, our website's easy. Move to Missoula. Move the number 2, right. Missoula. And you can get on there, and that has a lot of our information. We'll be posting, you'll probably find that Gardner report I was talking about. We have Facebook. You can go on to, look Diane Beck, Windermere, Beckie Peterson, Windermere. You can look at any of those. And then you can reach us. This is awful because I never call our cell phones. My cell phone, 406-829-6003. Our office is 541-6550. That's Windermere's office number. You can ask for the Beck team. So, yeah, we're pretty easy to find. And especially, just anymore, you just type in our names, and I think it's pretty easy to chase us down.
Yeah. Chase her down. Beckie Peterson with Windermere Real Estate on Missoula Real Estate today. I'm glad you came in today. It's always terrific to see you.
Oh, it's always fun. So much easier than I think. Even after being in the industry, you get all worked up and then realize it's just an easy conversation with Denny.
Thank you for listening to Missoula Real Estate Today. We hope you found this morning's information to be helpful. If you have any suggested topics for any future Missoula Real Estate Today programs, or any questions about buying or selling, contact Diane Beck with Windermere Real Estate. Email dianebeck@realtor.com or visit her website, homesinmissoula.com. That's homesinmissoula.com. We'll see you next time on Missoula Real Estate Today.